We're visiting this morning with Rebecca Freed. Rebecca is an attorney in Newark, and she's going to share information about her life as an attorney, a wife, and a mom. So, welcome.
Thank you, Judy. Welcome to our law offices of Genova Burns Giantomasi Webster here in Newark. We're very pleased to have you. I am currently counsel in our corporate political activity law group. I also have experience in the areas of nonprofit law and procurement law.
Tell us what you do in your spare time.
In my spare time, I really enjoy spending time with my husband and my 2 children. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. We enjoy doing fun things as a family, and I also enjoy volunteering for causes that I believe in.
Rebecca, just give us a little bit of insight into your personal situation and how you kind of put together your family and your professional life.
I grew up in New Jersey. I went to a local elementary school, Newark Academy for high school, and my parents often joke that I'm their brilliant child because I went to college at Tufts University in Massachusetts, law school at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and then when it was time to begin my career, get married, and have children, I moved back to New Jersey and currently live 5 minutes from my parents.
You made a comment to me about the influence your grandmother had on you when you were a youngster. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
We often joke in my family that my grandmother had a way of saying things that at times you thought were not true, but ended up being true. And she was also a woman before her time. When I was younger, my grandmother always told me that your education is forever and that nobody could ever take that away from you. She also felt that it was very important for a woman to have her own education and her own career so that she never had to depend upon somebody else unless she wanted to.
You have a very interesting legal focus. Please explain to us exactly what you do.
As I mentioned, I'm in the corporate political activity law group here at Genova Burns Giantomasi Webster. And one of the great things about our practice group is that just like our firm, it's really at the intersection of law, business, and government. In the corporate political activity law group, we counsel corporations, nonprofits, and individuals and help them comply with pay-to-play laws, lobbying laws, and other laws that impact government contractors and general interactions with the government.
Can you give us an example of what a contribution is?
I think it's very obvious to people that when you write a check to a political recipient that you're making a political contribution. But what we often see is that people don't realize that if you purchase an invitation to a political fundraiser, if you purchase an ad in an ad journal in connection with a political event, or even if you use company resources in connection with political activity, that is all considered a political contribution. And this is something that companies need to pay attention to at all times, but it's especially important this year in New Jersey because we are in a gubernatorial election year and in the middle of all of our legislative elections as well.
Can you summarize for us when you meet with someone for the first time and you're trying to decide whether or not they need your services, what are the kinds of questions that you would need to ask?
When we first meet with a new client here at our firm, it's very important for us to understand that client's business, the key individuals in that client's business, and the client's goals. The one thing I've realized in all the time I've been practicing in this area is that although the law may be the same and then change from time to time, no 2 companies are the same and no 2 individuals are the same. So we really focus on getting to know our clients, developing policies and systems that work for that particular client, and working with the client to tailor a program for their needs and that works for them.
When you work with a client, what is your due diligence process? What are you trying to find out?
When we work with a client, we first want to get an understanding of what that client's goals may be. Are they interested in making political contributions? Are they interested in maintaining eligibility for government contracts? in potentially lobbying the government, making independent expenditures. Once we understand our client's goals, we want to understand what the client has been doing up until this point, before they've come to us and asked for our help. It's very important to us that we get a full understanding of how the client works and operates, what the client's goals are going forward, and then an understanding of how they expect to implement a compliance program that works for their size and structure.
Rebecca, can you please summarize the plan you would recommend to a new client to develop and implement a system to avoid making mistakes?
When a new client comes to our firm, part of the advice that we would give them depends on whether they're coming to us for the first time because they're first thinking about getting involved in the political process, or whether the client is coming to us because they've made a mistake and they need to figure out what the implications of that mistake may be. When a client comes to us because they discover they made a mistake and they may not be eligible, for example, for a state government contract, we really try to get to the root of that mistake, figure out what the exposure may be, and figure out whether it's a mistake that can be fixed and the best way to fix it. If a client is coming to us because they're first thinking about getting involved in political activity, we sit down with that client. We talk to the client about their goals. We help the client implement a policy. And once we have a written policy that we've developed with the client, we go into the client's business and we train and educate the relevant people in that company about the policy. One of the things I have realized is that a policy isn't worth the paper it's written on if the relevant people in the company are not aware of its contents or the potential ramifications of violating that policy.
Are the political donation laws different in different states, and how do, for example, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, how do they all relate?
As you mentioned earlier, our headquarters of our firm is here in Newark. My practice group also has many attorneys who are working in our New York City office. And it's very interesting to me to look at the differences among the laws here in New Jersey, New York, and even in Pennsylvania. New Jersey has, I believe, perhaps the most stringent pay-to-play restrictions out of any state. We have laws at the state level. We have hundreds of local ordinances. Some apply to traditional procurement contracts, other to redevelopment agreements. In New Jersey, corporations can make contributions as entities. If you just simply go across the river into New York City, for example, New York City corporations are prohibited from making contributions. New York State, corporations can make contributions, but there is an aggregate limit. Pennsylvania is interesting because it prohibits corporate contributions but allows unlimited contributions. I know that this can be a lot to digest, but the bottom line is, even if you take this very limited area of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, there are vast differences among the laws, and it's very important to pay attention to the details in each jurisdiction.
Rebecca, that's pretty fascinating stuff. And thank you very much for sharing with us. And I'm sure many of our readers will want to follow up with you.